Hello, I'm Paul Wagenseal with Cyber Risk Alliance here at Identiverse, and we're interviewing Ajay Gupta, who's the CEO of SDG, and we're going to be talking about unlocking business value, navigating identity program challenges with expert insights. So, Ajay, let me ask you, how can organizations define or calculate an identity program's business value?
Well, let's take a step back before
Sure.
I get into sort of the specifics of that question. Identity management has been deployed by a lot of organizations for over 2 decades.
Sure.
And when it really first started out, it was a matter of securing who has access to the network and what assets do they have access to once they get into the network. Over time, and that was largely compliance driven and security driven.
Yeah.
Over time, it sort of melded into governance. But today, identity is really a core tenet of unlocking business value through its integration with business transformation initiatives. And what it's really doing is allowing the interaction between an organization and its employees, partners, and customers to be more rich and be more in context. So the business value really drives from not just eliminating risk or creating operating or providing opportunities for operational efficiency, but really eliminating revenue loss and more importantly contributing to revenue gain. And we could go into sort of a lot more detail on that subject, but as customers and partners are interacting with an entity, with an organization, they are providing more and more information to their organization about who they are and how they want to interact with that organization. And that data, number one, creates a little bit of a obligation on the organization to trust, to sort of protect that information and live up to the trust and the privacy of that information that the constituent is placing with the organization. But the second piece is, as these constituents provide more information, it allows the organization to create more of a frictionless experience for these constituents. And as they interact, not only just the entire customer lifecycle, but also the lifecycle of transactions within that customer lifetime journey, that interaction can be enriched through context that the organization learns from this data. And it's all tied to the identity. So that's where, if that is done effectively, it has the ability to really drive a lot of revenue growth for the organization and creating better and stickier relationships with their constituents.
Could you give me an example of how better identity and governance could unlock business value, could create better revenue?
For example, let's take the example of a consumer products company or a transportation company.
Sure.
An organization. So when a customer is interacting with, let's say, buying a consumer product, the first piece, when they first register on the website and they create a credential for themselves, if that process has a lot of toll gates and has a lot of friction, that constituent most likely will drop off and go to a competitor.
Yes.
So that process has to be of identifying who that individual is and who they say, and validating that they are who they say they are, has to be frictionless.
Yes.
Once that is done and they procure a product and they tell the organization more about themselves, about what their preferences are, what their choices are, giving them the right options of what products they should look at is the next step. And then once they've procured or bought a product, working with them through the post-sale process and helping them through the challenges that might arise, and then serving them additional products that they could potentially procure. That creates more opportunity for revenue growth for that, like a consumer products company.
So you're kind of taking the consumer on a bit of a journey there. You're really following them. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's more than just logging them in and getting their name.
It's not just identification and authentication anymore.
So it's sort of monitoring and shepherding. And that's what you seem to be describing.
Absolutely, and you have to stay in lockstep with the journey, and you have to, but the obligation of the organizations haven't really changed. You still have to have a deep focus on security and risk because you have to protect this information. because as soon as you break that trust, that customer is gone.
Right.
Right? They may
Right.
not come back.
Sure.
But then the second piece is, as you collect more information, how do you leverage that to increase the richness of the experience?
And how does your solution increase that richness?
So the way we work with our clients is through sort of three phases. In the beginning, we provide expert services and advise clients on how to look at identity as a business transformation engagement.
Sure.
It's not just technology. It's identifying people who can work with our clients who have the right balance of business and engineering or technical skills. At the end of the day, implementing an identity management initiative is a combination of implementing certain technology products, weaving them together, but really building the process engine around that to make sure that that transformation goes through. So there's a lot of organizational change management that comes into play, but you have to have the right skills and the right approach to develop that strategy on how this is going to get implemented and work for the organization. Having said that, it's very critical, and from our experience, to ensure that the strategy is not a one-size-fits-all. The strategy has to be tailored to each organization's appetite and ability to operationalize and derive benefits from that execution. So we tailor the strategy based on each organization's ability to actually consume that solution and then operationalize it and get benefit from it. Some might, for some organization might take them 3 to 5 years to get the full value. Others might be able to do it in 2 or 3 years.
So you're really partnering with these companies in a way, and it kind of parallel to the, logging and monitoring and shepherding of the customer. You're also kind of doing this with these companies, and they're your customer, and you're shepherding through this process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And the reason our clients work with us is because we're able to bring to bear a sort of a variety of experiences from having worked with multiple clients,
Right.
and seeing different challenges, different problems, and how they manifest themselves in various organizations who have different levels of maturity.
Okay, excellent. All right. So, okay, this is interesting. Why are identity programs not just a technology project?
Well, as we just talked about,
Yeah.
right? It's really integrated into the business solution. So 20 years ago, it was pretty much a back office IT project. It worked. It wasn't even then, but it worked. But today, especially in the last 10 years, as organizations have moved off-prem and gone to the cloud,
Right.
and almost every client of ours is undertaking some digital transformation or business transformation initiative, and everything is digital. By definition, that means you have to identify who you're interacting with. Whether it's an employee or a partner or a customer, or sometimes it's a non-human. So you have to understand who's connected
Right.
to your environment and what they're trying to do on it.
Of course, that makes sense. Now, one thing I've noticed is that, we're in 2024, and I think a lot of companies don't realize how quickly a lot of these technologies have advanced in the past, 8-10 years. Since like 2015. And we have obviously the cloud model, the hybrid model. We also have a lot of SaaS apps, and we also have a lot of remote working from home. How has your company sort of adapted to that and shepherded its customers through that rapid change, a change that many companies are not really even completely aware of how much impact those changes have?
Yeah. So our approach really, or sort of our sort of point of view, is that the basics haven't really changed.
Right.
It's application of technology to solve business problems.
Right. Okay.
Right. So technology and products evolve, and they've continued to evolve.
Right.
So specific to identity and access management, so it's not so much about having people who have proficiency in a particular product, but it's understanding the business of identity and access management and what that enables for our clients.
Yeah.
So solving that problem is what we're really using technology. That technology is just a tool.
Yes.
Right. So 10 years ago, maybe we had folks who were really smart in using a hammer and a nail, and today they're using power tools, but we're still hammering a nail in.
Right. The goal is the same.
The goal is the same.
Yeah.
But what we can do with the technology has evolved, and it might have been a little harder 15 years ago, but it's simpler, but there are additional challenges with the multi-premise approach, the hybrid cloud approach. So those create new challenges, but if you've got a business head-on with the right technical skills, that's what enables success.
Okay, great. All right. Now, so what experience and skills are needed to ensure that business value is delivered?
Well, it's a combination of the two, right? So you have to not only have product experts and folks who know how to string together these various products and make them work together, but more importantly, to make that successful, you need folks who understand business process.
Sure.
Folks who understand organizational dynamics, folks who can drive change through an organization, who are comfortable with communicating complex topics in simple language and getting consensus and getting folks to see a new way of doing things. And I think those are really important. Those really drive the success, because technical expertise, I have to say, is sort of relatively easy.
Sure.
The technology is not really the challenge. It's the implementation and operationalization of that technology that's the challenge that we have to solve.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who are very technical, they fail to see the big picture, and you've got to kind of keep that in mind to see what you're going to do with the technology. You know, what is the goal? You know, technology forms a path, but you've got to have, what's at the end of the path. You have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I wouldn't sort of generalize and say technologists don't always see the big picture. I think there are a lot of technologies that do see the big picture. It's just what they're comfortable doing.
Right.
They're comfortable putting technology together, and that's their core competency, and I think that's how they should be leveraged. Sure. But there are other folks who are very comfortable, living in that hybrid world of technology and business, and they play a different role and have a different value proposition to the whole equation, and others are more heavily weighted towards the business side of things and less technical, and they have a different role to play. So you need all three blends as part of the team to make this work.
Sure, okay. And then, so how can an organization ensure that business, that business value is achieved?
So it's really tying the it's really making sure that there's a communication plan within the enterprise. It's making sure that every constituent, every stakeholder understands what the end goal is.
Right.
You've got to have executive commitment to doing something. Identity management initiatives are large, complex, and they touch the entire organization. So if there isn't executive buy-in, it doesn't work too well. You can do it piecemeal, but you're not really going to achieve the goals of the business value that you set out to unlock. So clear definition of what your end goal is, and then getting executive commitment to that end goal is super critical.
Yeah, that's interesting, because identity management, I think people tend to think of it as cybersecurity, but it's much more than that, isn't it?
Oh,
really,
absolutely.
I mean, compliance, risk, it all plugs into that. Now, how do you tell people? How do you convince potential customers of the enormity of? You said it touches all parts of the company. How do you convince people of that it's more than just cybersecurity?
Well, I think people are realizing it's become a little easier today because a lot of the leaders that we work with, they realize that identity, without having a digital identity and a way to secure that and a way to augment that with context, they're not going to be able to deliver business value. And the business is demanding that. And the worst thing an organization can do is have multiple identity management solutions for different parts of the business, because somebody on the front end realizes that they need identity integrated with business transactions, and another part of the organization thinks it's only good for back office support. And now you're going to have conflict. So it just requires a lot of conversation and really tying what the identity management technologies and the initiative can do for the business, and making sure that we're truly driving, impacting revenue and impacting brand at the end of the day.
Well, it sounds like you've certainly figured out a way to speak to the C-suite about this stuff in a way that a lot of other companies might not. And anyway, I think we're about out of time. Those are all my questions.
All right.
We've been speaking with Ajay Gupta, CEO of SDG, and you can watch all this and get more information about SDG at securityweekly.com/SDGIDV. And once again, I'm Paul Wagenshill for Cyber Risk Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
All right, thank you. That was right on time.
Yeah. All right.
I hope I didn't go